In the world of board game media production, one man retains the integrity and tenacity to rise above the rest and compile the definitive list of the 100 best board games of all time. And that man, that legend, is Tom Vassell of the Dice Tower. And some guy named Chaz Marler's apparently made his own top 100 list. Because Tom asked him to.
No, I didn't.
Hey, Chaz Marler from Pair of Dice Paradise here, and welcome back to the next installment in this Top 100 Board Games of All Time series. Thank you for joining me, and today we are going to continue with numbers 90 through 81. So let's not waste any more precious time. Let's get started with the next game. Number 90 on our list is a compact little dice rolling game called Rolling Japan. This is a game where you have about 6 different colors of dice in a bag, and each turn a player will pull out 3 of them and roll them. And then each player also has a little pad of paper, almost like a map of Japan, a very abstracted one. And the map is split up into the different color sections, and what you have to do is place the numbers that were rolled into the corresponding colored areas of the map. Simple enough. However, the numbers in each square of this map must either be one less, one more, or the exact same number as the squares touching it. So as you begin to fill up this map, you'll find squares that you can no longer fit a valid number into. That's right. And when that happens, that player scores a penalty for each square that they could not fill with a valid number. At the end of the game, the player with the fewest penalties is the winner. Several times a year, a local organization holds some nice big game days in our area. And at the last couple of these, this has been the first game that has hit the table during these quarterly game days. So to me, it started to be kind of a special game to kick off those game days. And that is why Rolling Japan fills in space number 90 on this list. Well, we're only 11 games into this list, and already I'm going to start cheating. And I'm going to list 2 games for the number 89 slot. Fortunately, there's nothing in the Dice Tower bylaws that says that your top 100 list can't have 2 games sharing the same slot. Oh wait, here it is specifically. Each slot must be held by one and only one game. Fortunately, I never received a copy of those bylaws. So that's why number 89 is a tie for both Paperback and Letter Tycoon. Paperback and Letter Tycoon are both deck building, word building type of games, and I enjoy both of them quite a bit. So that's why I decided to smush them together into one shared spot on this list. I'm a sucker for a really good word game. Even Boggle is still in my collection somewhere. Look! Boggle! Yep, still have Boggle in my collection. Subsection paragraph 18b, Boggle is not eligible to be included in the top 100 games of all time list. Well, that's just rude. So if you enjoy word games like Boggle, but with a modern board gaming slant, I suggest checking out the games that are sharing my number 89 slot, Paperback and Letter Tycoon. Number 88 on my list is the Rodney Dangerfield of board games in my collection, because not only it gets no respect, but it also appeared in Caddyshack. And that is the game Pandemic Contagion. This is a game that may have its flaws, but I think is actually pretty underrated. Everyone that I have played this game with has said, "That's great, can we play regular Pandemic instead now, please?" And I don't understand why. In this game, you're playing as the virus, so you're playing as the bad guys, trying to spread your virusness across the globe, but there's other games that have had worse themes than that, so it can't be the theme itself that brings this game down. No, what I think works against this game is actually the Pandemic moniker on it. I don't know. Like I said, this game does have some flaws. In fact, my copy was given to me by a friend who got it himself, played it a few half dozen times, and then gave it to me because he said, quote, "Me and my family are done with this game. It's okay, but here, you can have it forever." So that's a ringing endorsement of number 88 on my list. Pandemic Contagion. Number 87 on my list is a game that I actually don't have in my collection, and that makes me a little bit sad. Because this is a neat little game called Cartagena. And it's essentially, what is it? It's a path building. It's not like Candyland. That's stupid. I don't know, it almost is. Okay, this is going to be the worst description of a game ever, but Cartagena reminds me of Candyland for gamers. What I mean is, in this game, each player plays the part of a pirate who's in this long, winding cave, trying to make it through the cave to this boat and escape. And you have several different pirate meeples, and you're trying to get them along this path. Now, each spot on the path has a different pirate goodie, like a pistol or a hook or a treasure or something. I don't know. I don't have a copy of the game, so I can't remember what they are. In fact, I'm probably making up a lot of this. So in this game, you'll play cards out of your hand, and you'll move down the path to the next available matching icon of the card that you played. Admittedly, similar to how you traverse the path in Candyland. The difference being that in Cartagena, there's decisions for the players to make, and the game is fun. So that's why Cartagena comes in at number 87. Cartagena, Perilous Pirate Pathing. Number 86 is not Boggle because it is the Lord of the Rings deck building game. Now, the Lord of the Rings deck building game is built on the Cerebus engine, which the DC deck builder is also built upon. And this game engine is enjoyable and has potential, but to me it's not without its flaws. See, the Lord of the Rings deck building game is the first game on this list that's going to introduce a recurring theme. And that's games that, through no fault of their own, I enjoy more as a sandbox to just experiment with and play differently than originally intended. So for the Lord of the Rings deck building game, I have the three primary sets that came out for it. The Fellowship of the Ring, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King sets. And I've smushed those all together. And what I'll do usually when I'm in the mood to play it is I'll actually get out all the cards and the sets, and I'll sit down and I'll actually take the rule book and set it aside and kind of just come up with my own little concepts and ideas and new little mini games to play with it. And for that, those three sets together actually work really well. So that's why the Lord of the Rings deck building game shows up on my list where it does. It's a game that I do enjoy, but I enjoy using it as a sandbox for experimenting with, homemade board game concepts rather than playing it as originally intended. And that's why it sits on the list where it does. Number 85 on my list is a game that, for the life of me, I still don't actually know how it's pronounced. It's either Targi or Targi or Targi. At this point, I've just given up and I've been calling it Caverna for the last 6 months. But Target is a fantastic game because it's a worker placement area control game for 2 players and 2 players only that works. And not only works fantastically. This is a game that I'm now showing you a picture of, so you can see that you have the card layout. You have kind of this grid of cards in the middle and this area around those cards. And each player has 2 workers, and they'll place their workers on the cards around the outside perimeter, which allows them to use the card that's placed where their meeples intersect. And when you place a meeple, it then not only gives you your choice of what card you're going to be using, but also cuts off your opponent because they can't put their meeples in the same row or column as you've put your own. So right there, you have worker placement and area control for 2 players that works just beautifully, seamlessly. It's right on Targi. Really, the primary downside to this game, to me, is that it seems like this is one of the few, if not the only game designed by this designer. And that's a shame, because I would love to see what else this gentleman has designed. So that's Targi, or Targi, or Targi, but however you mispronounce it, is definitely a game to go out and try playing. All right. Whether or not an RPG qualifies as a board game, number 84 on my list is the RPG Paranoia. All right, fun Chaz Marler fact. I don't know if I like role-playing games, but I like to think I like the idea of role-playing games. The problem is the enjoyable role-playing experiences that I've had have been few and far between. Without fail, growing up, every single session of D&D that I played started out the exact same way. You find yourself in a cave, there are goblins or skeletons over there. What do you do? And then, after about 5 to 10 minutes of people just arbitrarily rolling dice and shooting magic missiles, the game would devolve into getting some more snacks and going off to play foosball or something like that. So that was my level of expectations that one summer morning in middle school when I was invited to play a game of Paranoia. I came in and Paranoia was completely different. In this game, each player has a set of clones available. You basically have 6 lives at your disposal, which is useful because the game is set in this strange post-apocalyptic dystopian future in which this supercomputer, well-intentioned supercomputer, controls everything about the world and wants to protect mankind against the greatest threat that it can conceive of, communism. If any player is found to be guilty of the treason of communism, even maliciously by other players, the computer will instantly order that player to be destroyed and one of their clones comes to take their place. Because obviously their clone because for some reason, I don't know how, that makes total sense. When played well, the game becomes this crazy environment of alliances and secrets and sabotage and backstabbing each other right at the right time, and lives up to its name of Paranoia. So, whether or not an RPG game actually qualifies as a board game, I don't care, because I love the experiences that I've had with Paranoia so much that it has worked its way onto my list as my 84th favorite game of all time. Number 83 on my list is another pirate-themed game called Libertalia. And what intrigues me about Libertalia is the way that the hand management works. In this game, there's a deck of about 30 to 35 or so different cards, and each player has the same deck, but not all the cards are used. In the first round, 9 cards are randomly chosen out of the deck, and each player takes the same 9 cards into their hand. So each player has the same 9 abilities available to them in the round. Then each turn, each player will simultaneously pick one of those cards and play them. Of course, each player probably isn't picking the same card to play. This continues until 6 of the 9 cards in your hand have been used, and then every player receives 6 more randomly chosen cards, but the same 6 cards for each player, and they go through a second round. Third round, same thing. What fascinates me about this game design is that throughout the game, each player will have the same 21 cards to choose from, and how well or badly that you do during this game just depends on the order in which you play those cards as compared to all of your opponents. It's a simple and elegant game design which keeps itself open for a lot of variability, and that's why Libertalia is at number 83 on my list. Revisiting the trend of games that use dice in interesting ways is number 82 on my list, Kingsburg. In Kingsburg, the players roll the dice, which is normal, but then they will take those dice and place them on the board in certain locations to take control of certain people in the city that are available to help them out. And if you take one, you block everyone else from taking that same one. And you can't just take any one you choose. It depends on the numbers that you rolled on the dice. So now you have to look at what you have rolled and calculate where you're going to put these dice, but then hope that your opponents don't take this guy before you do, because now you're blocked. And now you got to figure out what number combination of your dice can you make that matches someone else in the city that could still help you, but this guy's not as helpful as the other one. So you know what? Do I just actually go for someone that helps me less, but actually by taking them will help my opponent even less, so I'm not just hurting me, but I'm hurting my opponent more? Or do I just go for the person who tries to help me before my opponent takes him to help me less? Whew! I take a lot of naps after I play this game. In addition to that, add in a lot of the variability and customization for each game that's introduced in its expansion, and you have a game that actually you can take a lot of different approaches with as you play it. That's why number Kingsburg is the game 82 on my list. I think I need one of those naps right now. Wrapping up today's segment is going to be game number 81. And this is a card game that will make you frown. But it'll make you frown in one of those good ways. One of those ways that you're frowning because your mind is working and the gears are turning and you're trying to figure out how things work together. And by the end of the game, you need one of those Kingsburg naps. And that means that this game could only be Arboretum. In this game, you're playing cards in numerical rows in front of you in a tableau, while your opponents do the same. However, the cards that you don't play on the table, the cards that you keep into your hand, will also be not only beneficial, but necessary for the end game scoring to not only trigger your point scoring, but also prevent your opponent's point scoring at the end. The result is a game in which you're simply playing numbered cards down on the table in a row, but you end up never knowing exactly which card in your hand to put on the table. I've seen this game reduce grown men to tears. And while that's not true, my earlier quip about pandemic contagion being present in Caddyshack totally is. Alright, I'm gonna have to wrap up this episode of my top 100 games list because I've just received a text message from Dice Tower HQ. Read your top 100 handbook rules ASAP! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. All right, so it looks like I have some top 100 bylaws to refamiliarize myself with. And while I go and do that, why don't you head on over to the Pair of Dice Paradise and Dice Tower YouTube channels and subscribe for more board game news, reviews, commentary, and best standards and practices documentation. Until then, I've been Chaz Marler, and you've been watching my top 100 top board games of all time list. See you again soon.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool Stuff, in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.
My top 100 games of all time. Not just the games as of 6:30 this morning, but all time. Even before I was born, those games are in here for consideration. Even games that predate, I don't know where I'm going. That is, okay. Woo, warming up. Warming up.